The idea of the fortress settlement began with sanctuary. Though the entire settlement was surrounded by a wall, there was only one main building. Later on, I added an artillery emplacement, a morgue for my power armor complete with an office, and a power generator facility. Being somewhat nostalgic, however, I never did get around to updating that one building. As a settlement, it was extremely poorly defended, but for some reason it was never attacked. The next step forward towards an actual control room was at the Slog. When Wasteland Workshop released and added concrete building materials, I had just finished building it. I was already developing a tower mentality, and the main construction here was on top of the existing building. It was, for that time, heavily defended and topped with 2 artillery emplacements. Working on the assumption that power generators would always be attacked, and if destroyed would stop powering turrets, I made the power generators inaccessible. This settlement contains 3 developments, which later made the dedicated control room possible. 1. The central shaft. The building below the main construction had a skylight, and a shaft runs upward through the floors above. I don't always follow this design philosophy anymore, but nearly all of my construction uses a closed shaft to run wires to and from a central switching point. 2. Multi-level rooms. Used entirely aesthetically here, the main room features an inner balcony. All control rooms feature multi-level architecture to improve visibility. 3. Although it's used entirely for observation purposes here, this settlement contains a second, smaller tower built to house additional turrets and generators to power them. At the top of this tower is a small room which contains a single control, a switch which actuates a siren. Here we are now at Sunshine Tidings Co-op. Although it's all one unit, this settlement started off with separate buildings as well. There's a distinct living quarters building, a morgue, an art gallery, and an indoor greenhouse. Around the periphery are a few dedicated defense towers. Later on, a basketball court was added. Entrance to the settlement is by a single powered door. This is where the control room began. It began with the question, if this settlement is attacked, where do I want to be? High up, of course, so I can see what's going on to activate the siren. But it would be nice, wouldn't it, if I could flip another switch and close those doors so my stupid settlers won't run out and attack a Deathclaw with pipe pistols? And so it was done. Of course, there was more functionality here than just doors. Another switch controlled the release for a caged Deathclaw. Visibility was by means of the concrete wall filled with wire mesh, which is essentially a heavy screen. Next, we're off to Longfellow's cabin. Although the cabin is still here, the workshop is in the basement of the operations tower. The area is filled with skyscraper-like towers and the whole place is enclosed inside a concrete wall. It looks for all the world like an actual city. There are dedicated buildings everywhere here. Besides the operation tower, there's an armory, synthetic resources, where you build robots, resource recovery, which houses an iBot pod even though iBots don't work in Far Harbor, 2 power generation facilities, 2 food production buildings, a dormitory tower, a medical facility, an art gallery, a dining hall, a morgue for power armor, and a water treatment facility. The entrance is not just through a powered door, but through a tunnel set with traps and Tesla traps around. Oh, and there's a vertebrate pad too. Here, the control room was actually built to be a control room. The operations tower is the tallest building in the settlement because higher was better for visibility. It uses a small shaft to run power conduits up through the tower's length. Again, wire grating was used for visibility since this was before mods added glass as a building material. I spent a lot of time on this settlement, so much time that I decided to go back to the single building approach. To experiment, I chose Abernathy Farm. All those buildings were consolidated into one. Abernathy Farm consists of 3 sections. The south section contains 2 towers and houses the workshop and generators. The central section contains everything else. The north section is essentially just a wall that surrounds the pre-existing portions of Abernathy Farm under the power pylon. Although there are many points of interest here, and I strongly recommend paying a visit to Abernathy Gallery, we're focused on the control room. This was the first settlement operations room. Mods had finally gone live for consoles, so I had access to greenhouses, and operations contained 2 stories of them. The control deck was suspended above the floor and contained not only door and siren controls, but could close off every level of the central tower as well as the 2 other wings. Additional defenses were provided by 2 pairs of caged deathclaws. This settlement used a central power shaft that ran the height of the tower. Also, for reasons of visibility, operations was not at the tower's top, but only about halfway up. Nevertheless, visibility near the base of the settlement remained a problem. The issue was addressed in Ferrani Outpost, a custom settlement added by the Conquest mod. Instead of having a simple tower, Ferrani used a central core suspended between 4 thin towers with the operations level on the bottom of the core. The walls and floor of the ops level are glass, allowing for greatly improved visibility when combined with the suspended control deck. The chance of turrets not being able to hit enemies in the shadow of a wall is greatly reduced as well, since all 4 towers carry turrets and lie within the firing arcs of each other tower's turrets, as well as the central core's armament. The only other major change here is that Ferrani swaps out the previous designed central power shaft with a central elevator. Though Ferrani contains everything necessary for a settlement except settlers, it was not intended to be an actual settlement per se so much as protection for its 4 artillery emplacements. The next evolution, seen here in the Nuka World parking lot, contains the angled windows and suspended deck from Ferrani, coupled with the former central tower architecture. Although the design appears promising, the jury is still out until the settlement is complete and all the wiring has been run.
I can hear the raven calling, calling out my name, beckoning with blackened wings to lose myself again.